Me uno como ofrenda la creación. Te doy mi tiempo y mi vida entera. Quiero hacer el bien, en lo poco serte fiel. Yo te entrego mi corazón. Me uno como ofrenda la creación. Yo te doy mi tiempo y mi vida entera. Quiero hacer el bien, en lo poco serte fiel. Yo te entrego mi corazón. Yo te entrego mi
Thank you. That was very, very good. Didn't understand a word of it, but. All right, thank you. Got a little bit of a brain, Josh. So, yesterday, my daughter Emily sent me a suggestion for the topic of today's discussion. I thought it was really good. Little meme, a quote from John Moore. I'd rather be in the mountains thinking about God than in church thinking about the mountains. So let's get out in the mountains. Amen. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm going to subject you to a little bit more than that. Let's bow our heads in prayer this morning. Father in heaven, thank you so much for the Sabbath day, and thank you for just being with us and sending your Holy Spirit to guide us. And Father, just use my voice today to glorify you and your Holy Spirit to open the ears and minds of those that are here today to receive a blessing from you, we pray in Jesus' name. So it's kind of a time of confession, a time of observation. The confession part is that Wendy's is a little too convenient for my workplace. So if I don't pack a lunch and I need to get some food, I go over there and clog up my arteries a little bit. But it's also kind of a vantage point to watch people, which is something I like to do. Does anybody else here like to watch people if they get a chance to just sit and observe? And so one of the first things they observe in Wendy's is they've got a great big TV on the wall. It's got a news channel on there that it's interesting to see the technique. You see, news anchors on there talking about stuff, things scrolling across the bottom, or a banner that says something, and then it'll show a picture of somebody, maybe the president or somebody else talking, but that's not who you hear. That's just a picture of them, and the news anchor is telling you what they're saying. And we've all heard the term and probably even used it, fake news comes to mind, you know? Why aren't we hearing that speaker speak what he's saying, you know? Don't spend a lot of time watching TV. I don't watch news, I don't watch TV, basically. The other observation is, as a guy from New York that I work with, a term he uses is cattywampus across Main Street. There's an establishment called the Medicine Man, marijuana shop. Sit there at Wendy's and watch people, Medicine Man. And they're basically all walks of life. They're a lot of fairly young people, some older people, you know, but basically a pretty big spectrum of people come and go nonstop in that place. So the observation is these people are under an illusion that has something to offer them that will fulfill their lives, do whatever, kill pain, whatever. It's not just medicinal, it's recreational also. Comes to the topic that I had in the bulletin, truth lost. And I saw an article online, which we all know everything online is true, right? So take it for a grain of salt. But it was talking about this very subject. And there's some interesting things were brought out in there in that one of the things that caught my mind was that as we have progressed in society, as a general rule, everybody's IQ has increased. That's questionable, maybe, but that was a premise that it brought out. The problem is that the knowledge in the world is growing exponentially. So technically, we're actually losing ground. And a reaction to that is that we fall back on belief. You know, we're overwhelmed by the amount of information, and the belief I'm talking about is not a religious belief. It's a belief based on our own impressions. There's no objective, no substance to why we believe that. So you hear somebody say, well, I feel like this and this is going on. Josh, we got a little bit of rain going on in here. Okay. And so, what was I? We'll say something like, I feel like this is what it is about a subject. But if we're to be asked, why do we feel that? We don't have anything to support it. Whoa. Maybe if I move the mic down a little bit, it might help, I don't know. Move it up. Okay, it's not coming in yet. I can't see what I'm doing close range, so there we go. Is that better? All right. Yeah, it's kind of ringing in my head, and I was a little worried about that. I don't know where I was at on this. Anyway, and unfortunately, I have a short lead time on this discussion, so I'm going to have to look at my notes a little bit. Anyhow, when we turn to the Bible, we find several verses in the Old Testament. Jeremiah 7:28 says, "This is a nation that does not obey the voice of the Lord their God, nor receive correction. Truth has perished and has been cut off from their mouths." And that's kind of where I was going with the topic here. Hosea also says the same thing. Basically, in Hosea 4, it says, "Hear the word of the Lord, the children of Israel. For the Lord brings a charge against the inhabitants of the land. There is no truth or mercy or knowledge of God in the land." Going on to verse 6 is one we all know fairly well. It says, "My people are destroyed by lack of knowledge." Proverbs goes over and over and over again about how important it is that we gain wisdom, that we gain knowledge, and how the source of that wisdom and knowledge has to be from God. Some years ago, I'll share a little bit of an experience I had, how the Lord blesses and even the little things. It was probably about 18 years ago now, I can't remember exactly. We were living in a different house than we have now, and I thought, well, you know, I have this time that I could listen to some audio that I don't really have time to read or whatever. So I got online, and the internet was pretty young back about 2000. It was starting to happen, but it wasn't where it is today, where we don't have access to it anyway. And I ordered a set of audio CDs online, and I thought, well, this would be good. I can just put these in my CD player and listen to them while at work, whatever, when I'm doing stuff that doesn't require 100% focus of everything. And so there was some kind of a little delay, and I didn't get them, and it was right at a time when my mother had her stroke, and she was in the hospital, and things were really not good at all. And so we're there, you know, I got a call from the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning telling me to come down there. And so I came down there, and so I'm there with her till like 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. We had that house on the market at that time. Had it on the market for a year and a half, almost 2 years maybe. And so I'm sitting there wondering, you know, in this limbo as to what was going on, and I get a call from the realtor. I have an offer on my house. It never rains, but it does pour. So, one thing led to another, you know, signed the papers, closed on the house. They wanted us out of the house within 2 weeks or something like that. So, packed up, we moved, and I still hadn't received these CDs. You know, so I'm thinking, oh, good, I don't live there anymore. And so I called the company, and it had been quite a while from the time I'd ordered it until this point. And so I called the number I had, and it was a number in California. And the person I talked to there said, oh, well, we do the recording here, but we don't do the shipping, so we have no idea, you know, what might have happened with those CDs. Call this other number. So I called that number, and the person there said, oh, well, you'll have to call the first number. You know, it's kind of a back and forth thing, and I just couldn't get past that barrier. And finally, you know, I just kind of wrote it all off and said, you know, to myself, well, maybe that got delivered to somebody else that needed it worse than I did, you know. But I had paid $150 or something. I don't remember the exact amount. Anyway, so I just, you know, basically wrote that off because I couldn't get past this phone tag stuff, and moved on. Well, a couple of years later, I get an email from this company thanking me for being one of their preferred customers. I did reply to that email and said, yes, I should be a preferred customer. I paid you some money and didn't get anything in return. And I didn't know where that was going to go. And I mean, it was a matter of hours I had a response to that. And they worked it all out, refunded my money, because in the meantime, I had gotten a set of CDs from somewhere else. So, while there's a lot of merit, and I listen to the CDs, it's really good because it's just the Bible narrated, and I call it listening to studying the Bible unfiltered. It's not somebody's inspirational book. It's not somebody's, you know, lesson study guide that has an agenda to promote. Not that those are bad, you know. It's just that I just want to hear what the Word of the Lord has to say, and it's been really a real blessing. And you can't really come to deep theological doctrines and all that stuff just listening to the Bible or just reading the Bible. But one thing you will find over and over and over in every book of the Bible, doesn't matter what it is, even the historical books, has these little gems embedded in them about how, in the Old Testament, referred to the Lord your God is doing everything he can to draw you to recognize him, to save you. And so having said that, and I know most of us have lives that don't allow for us to just sit down and read, or whatever for an hour or two or whatever. But many of us commute to different places. So I listen to these CDs on the way to work, and at lunchtime I'll sit in a car and listen to them, and on the way home. And interestingly enough, you can go through the whole Bible in a couple months doing that. And so far this year, a couple times through the New Testament and the Old Testament once, and all very good. Where I'm going with this is about developing a relationship with Jesus Christ. This is not about learning anything except about God and about that relationship with Jesus Christ. And my wife had the children's story. I knew when I came into this that the railroad tracks, the main line here, is going to have some bumps in it. So there's a little transition that may not quite be easy to follow. But last week my wife had the children's story, and she talked about a hike we did in Grand Canyon in March and some fuel issues that she had, and how it wasn't always, she had some tough times coming out of the Grand Canyon. But the point being is that we do a lot of crazy hikes and stuff, mountain climbs and so forth, but something I do many times, and she does not understand this, is we'll get out there and we'll go a long ways, and I'll come to a place where I say, okay, I've got to stop. I've got to just stop. And I will do that. Just stop, lay down on the ground, completely relax every muscle, and I'm asleep like that. I mean, I'm talking about less than a minute, I'll go to sleep. Well, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I wake up, I'm ready to go again. It's just some kind of a little reset thing. So what she said in her children's story that really jumped out at me was that she got to a point where Josh just said, "Stop! You got to stop. You got to get some fuel. You got to reset a little bit here." Not quite in those words, and she did it. And it helped her a lot. Now I can't brag because everybody knows anything about extreme exercise. Heather, I don't know if she's here. Let's see her. Unfortunately, Ashley isn't here. She also knows about this stuff. But every time you go out and you go for 16 hours, 18 hours on your feet hiking, something really, really strenuous, you never know what's going to happen. You can do one thing one time perfectly right. You're fueling right, your hydration is right, everything is working for you, and you don't cramp up, you don't get blisters, it's just a good hike. That happened to me in March, I had, for whatever reason. We did 29 miles in 13 hours with about 13,000 vertical feet of change. But what stood out in that children's story was that when Josh told her to stop, she did. What is significant about that is those of us that are getting a little frosty around the edges, we still listen to the youth. And this is where I'm going with this. Fuel properly spiritually. Feed your spiritual life. And I would love to see a church where those of us that are elders and have been here a long time would step back, take a mentor role, invite the youth, have the youth step forward and just go with it. And if the church gets in their way, this is not about the church. This is about going with the gospel of Jesus to your generation, because we can't reach you, but you can reach us. And whether you know it or not, you know, you guys are capable of very much influencing the way we are. And I'd love to see that happen, where the youth feed their spiritual lives, share their spiritual lives, not only to their generation, to ours, but to ours also. In Isaiah 59, it says, this is back to the first part here, justice is turned back and righteousness stands afar off. The truth is fallen in the street. Equity cannot enter, so truth fails. And he who departs from evil makes himself prey. We see this in Daniel 6. Daniel did the same thing. He did not worship only the king, making himself prey to the society he was in. And God used him so that even he affects us today in that story to stand for what is true, for what is right, to worship the Lord. I've gone a little farther than longer than I planned. Sorry about the delay to the mountains, guys, but they're still there. They're not going anywhere. Let's invite the praise team to come up and bow our heads in prayer. Father in heaven, thank you so much for your sacrifice of Jesus on the cross for us. Thank you so much for your Holy Spirit to guide us, to fuel us, to lead us, and work through us. Be with each one of us here to draw us closer to you, we pray in Jesus' name.
Test.